stage a Bluebird Leader Board Chair and the owner of Proto Technology, a beloved sponsor of this event. Please give a warm Bluebird Leader round of applause for Marissa Maldonado!
Hello, welcome to day 2, Bluebirds. How's it going? I am so honored to be here and kick off our next content for day 2. And I first wanted to start with a quick comment. So there is so much power in sisterhood. We are sisters, we are daughters, we are coworkers, we are friends, we are mothers, we are grandmothers. God willing, we are great-grandmothers. We have brothers. We have so many titles. And it is a very powerful thing. And to be in a room with a bunch of women and allies to lift each other up is just one of the most incredible and special things. And I don't need to tell you this, you know this. So I ask you as we go into day 2, make a commitment to schedule 3 virtual coffee dates with individuals here. Do it. Keep the momentum going. Sisterhood is an unstoppable force, and this is a momentum that is unstoppable. And to some people, it might be actually intimidating. So when we get back and we feel discouraged, don't worry, you have that coffee date coming up to remind yourselves of the power and strength of being a woman, of thinking like a woman, of supporting women. So I'm going to ask you guys to do one thing with me. This is my little toy from my children. I take pictures when I travel, and I really want to do a cool little selfie with it, with all of you in the background saying hi to my kids. It's never too much. So how many, while you've been here, got pulled into work stuff? Ee. How many of you got pulled into work stuff because someone was being a jerk? Or not acting right? Isn't that something? It is something that we have to combat because we want to lead authentically, and then there's sometimes that people just piss us off.
Testing.
So I think this is going to be a really awesome conversation, and I am super honored to introduce an individual. As the best-selling author of How to Work with Jerks and the dynamic president CEO of Tailored Training Solutions, he redefines what success truly means in today's fast-paced professional world. He appreciates and shares with listeners that no matter how talented, smart, or gifted you are, and no matter what role we serve or title we carry, our levels of success is not measured based on the work we produce. It is measured based on the relationships we build, like what we're doing right now. To that end, he works with organizations to build successful leaders by building stronger customers and workplace relationships. He's received national attention in NBC, ABC, Fox, and CBS News, no big deal, for his expertise in leadership development, starting with emotional intelligence EQ, stating emotional intelligence EQ is the key component of building a successful leader. And it is the most important skill that will help you thrive in today's ever-changing business environment. He's excited to be speaking with you today to share with you tips and strategies for not only how to work with jerks, but how to prevent from becoming one yourself. I am so honored to introduce you to Eric Williamson.
Bluebird leaders. By show of hands, how many of you ever worked with a jerk? Everyone in this room? Some of y'all are pointing at each other too? Oh my gosh. Keep your hands raised if you've ever been called a jerk. Not as many people raised their hand this time. Interesting. Okay. Well, check this out. The worst jerk I ever worked for occurred several years ago. And she was more than a micromanager. She was actually a narcissist. Anyone here ever worked with a micromanager or a narcissist? Whew, it ain't fun, is it? I mean, she was the kind of person who people couldn't stand or they feared, but for me, it was both. I couldn't stand her and I feared her. And she loved to throw her title in people's faces. I mean, she would say things like this: as your director, I need you to do this. As your director, I need you to do that. You know someone who's in love with their title? So this one time, I was responsible for putting this report together for our executives who were coming into town for their quarterly visit. As I'm putting this report together, no lie, my director, she's standing above me and she's telling me what information to leave in and what information to leave out of this report. Until I come across some information that I know our execs want to know about. They just talked about it the other week. And they were expecting an update during their quarterly visit. So your boy E here took the initiative to include this information inside the report. As I'm typing along, including this information inside the report, my director, she looks down, she notices what I'm doing, she's like, oh, whoa. Leave that information out. I don't want you to put it in there, take it out. So I look up at her and I say, but boss, I think we should leave it in there. The execs, they're expecting an update during their quarterly visit. That makes sense, right? And I assumed that she would agree with that approach, so I continue to type away. As I'm typing along, all of a sudden, I get this tap on my shoulder. And it's my director. She goes, Eric, stop typing and look up at me. So I stop typing and I look up at her. And I'll never forget what she did to me at that moment. She pointed right in my face and she said, Eric, you work for me. And as your director, I'm telling you to leave that information out. Are we clear? Bluebird fam, do you think I left that information out? No? I told you I was afraid of her. I did not want that smoke, okay? So I left it out. Later on that week, the execs, they come into town for their quarterly visit. And they're meeting with my director inside the executive conference room. I'm at my desk minding my own damn business, typing away on another project, when I get a call at my desk, and it's my director. She says, Eric, these execs would like to talk to you about your report. Please meet us inside the executive conference room. Then. Which some of you might be thinking how I was feeling at that moment, right? No. In actuality, I was more so like, yes, my 15 seconds of fame have finally arrived. I finally get FaceTime with the bigwigs. So I leave my desk, I head towards the executive conference room door. I open up the executive conference room door and I barely step a foot inside when my director stops me. She goes, Eric, these execs are wondering where a specific piece of information is inside the report. It's not in there. I want you to go back to your desk and don't come back until it's inside the report. Are we clear? Can you believe that? Now I gotta ask you, what would you have done if you were in my shoes at that moment? Called her out? Walked right in the room, huh? Remember when? Throw her right under the bus? I'm gonna be vulnerable with you for a moment because I wish that I had the courage and the confidence to do any of these things that you're recommending right now. But truth be told, I didn't do any of that. You wanna know how I responded? Here was my response. I stood there frozen like a deer in the headlights, just like that classic Generation Z stare that's going viral right now. Anyone here familiar with that? You ask them a question, they're just like, because I couldn't believe she would humiliate me like that. I mean, needless to say, she was not a model of good behavior. But I tell you what, though, at that moment, I stopped giving a damn. I became known, what is referred to today as a quiet quitter. By show of hands, how many of you have ever been a quiet quitter? Oh, really? Well, I was a quiet quitter well before it became popular, okay? But you know something? I couldn't believe she would humiliate me like that. How she threw me under the bus. She had me question my own value, my own worth, whether or not I was good enough. Anyone here ever have a jerk make you feel like that? Yeah? Anyone here ever have a jerk make you feel like these images here on the screen? Yeah? Maybe some of you have hesitated to confront a jerk, not because you didn't recognize their behavior, but because you didn't want to be seen as difficult or emotional or not a team player. Or maybe some of you have gone silent when dealing with jerks because that voice in your head keeps telling you, hey, it's just business. It's not personal, so get over it. Or maybe some of you have encountered jerks who made you feel invisible, like your contributions didn't even matter and it slowly chipped away at your confidence. Or maybe some of you were just like me, walked away from jerks not just frustrated, but questioning your own value, like, is it me? Am I the problem? Or perhaps some of you don't know where to go in terms of working with jerks, but you know that it's causing you low productivity and low morale. Well, if you're nodding your head yes to this today, you're in luck. Because if you're a business leader, if you're an advocate, ally, DEI champion, and you've smiled in the face of jerk behavior, you felt your voice minimized, if you shrunk yourself to avoid conflict, this program's for you. And if you've worked with a jerk, and you think there's a possibility where you might be a jerk, and it's causing you difficulty with getting stuff done, getting support from others, or achieving your goals, you're in the right place. And for everyone here who's had to lead with courage in places not built for you, today, we're going to strengthen that courage so you can develop some tools to help you lead boldly, confidently, and without compromise. So it doesn't matter where you are in terms of working with jerks, managing conflict, or building relationships to achieve enterprise-wide success. I've got something that's going to help you out today. So today we're going to go on a 3-part journey to help you transform how you manage conflict, how you build relationships, and work with jerks. The first part is recognize. You're going to recognize the signs, the characteristics, and the traits of a jerk. You're going to recognize a jerk and prevent from becoming one yourself. You see, oftentimes when people hear my talks, they say, yes, Eric's going to speak the truth today. He's going to help me get along with that person because that person's a jerk, not me, it's them. But once people hear what a jerk truly is, that's when the light bulb moment comes on. And that's when people see me afterwards and say, you know something, Eric? I think I'm the jerk. Can you help? Of course I can help. So if you encounter that same epiphany, let's talk afterwards. And after we recognize, we'll respond. We're going to learn how to set boundaries, manage conflict, and stay grounded. And then after we respond, we will rise from burnout to belonging. You're going to own your story. You're going to own your power. And ultimately, this is going to give you a powerful framework to build relationships with all types of people. Because let's face it, in order to get anything done, you need your superiors to advocate for you. You need your peers and colleagues to validate your ideas. And you need those individual contributors and direct reports to execute those ideas. So your ability to build relationships with these people is essential. Now, before we get started, what I'd like you all to do, take out your phones right now. That way you can scan this QR code, you can get access to all of my awesome resources. You'll get my Leader's Guide to Managing Difficult Relationships Stress-Free. You'll get my guide to how to work with jerks and prevent from becoming one yourself. I've got 5 conflict styles that you can use when you encounter various conflict situations instead of relying on your own habitual way, which if you're like me, can make a bad situation worse. And if jerks are just ruining your day and they're taking the fun out of play, well, I invite you to scan this QR code, and I'd be happy to share with you a few ideas to help you out with your exact situation. So here's how we're going to get started. The first thing I want to do, I want to hear from you. I'm curious to know, what is your definition of a jerk? And I've been talking to some people these last few days. They've been asking me, well, what's a jerk? I'm like, well, what you tell me what a jerk is. So do we have any brave souls here willing to share what they think a jerk is? Someone who takes credit for your work. Very good. Thanks, Sarah. Anybody else? Egomaniac. Yes, I've been there too. Yes? Yes. Yes. You know something? As I was preparing for this presentation, I was interviewing certain people. And I got to give a shout out to Mike Cosell. He was telling me, he shared this perspective. He said, you know something, Eric? Oftentimes people aren't jerks. They're just misunderstood. They're protecting something, or they're stressed. And I've had the opportunity to interview some of you other folks here, and some of you had some enlightening comments about health IT, and that jerks in health IT, they're not loud or obvious, are they? They're the ones that keep you from those key meetings. They question your credibility behind closed doors. They block you from opportunities without even mentioning your name. Is Amy here? My friend Amy? There she is. I had a great conversation with Amy. She goes, you know something, Eric? Jerks who are in leadership positions, you know what they do? They use their power and their influence to keep you from those meetings, those conversations that you belong at. Anyone here can relate to that? Yeah. Would you like to hear my definition of a jerk? It's a little different than what I've heard so far. And before I share with you that definition, let me just give you the backstory about how I arrived at this definition. Because when I was writing this manuscript, I was getting feedback from all types of people about just what a jerk is. Friends, family members, random people on the streets and in coffee shops. I was talking to business leaders in small, mid-level, and large organizations about what a jerk is. And I had all these pages of examples about what a jerk is, and I was like, I can't put all these definitions in a book. Who's going to read this? So I had to come up with a definition that casts a wide net, but still resonates with people. So that's why my definition of a jerk is someone who doesn't use social skills as a necessary job skill. And I want to emphasize the word necessary right now, because right now, especially in health IT, where we've got so much change and disruption and transformation going on, it's not just a nice thing to do to just communicate effectively, use active listening skills, or collaborate. Those should be considered job requirements. Because without them, you come across as cold and like a jerk, and you won't get anything done. It'll be impossible to do. Now, Gartner, they did a study not too long ago, and it revealed that over half of Generation Z employees, they don't feel ready to enter the workplace. Half. Why? Because they haven't developed the right social skills needed to interact with anyone. Which is not only why they had this classic Generation Z stare, but they're also going to their leadership, requesting some form of leadership training, some kind of social skills training. But you know something? After further review, it's not just Generation Z. All of our social skills has eroded since 2020, which is why we need to make it a priority right now. Now, as a matter of fact, if I sat down with you over a cup of coffee, I bet I'd be able to identify maybe the top 3 social skills you and your team needs to develop, and I'd help you put a plan together to develop them. So that way you're not just achieving digital transformation goals, you're building real relationships. So now that we talked about what a jerk is, we're going to have some fun with this segment. We're going to talk about how you might be a jerk, and here's what we're going to do. I'm going to section this off here, okay? We're going to start with this side here, and I'm going to shout out, you might be a jerk, and I want you as loud as you can to say if, okay? This side. Then this side's going to go, and then this side's going to go, and then we're all going to go. You all got it? Okay. You might be a jerk. If. Now let's do it a little, come on, louder. You might be a jerk. If. You're incompetent. Specifically, if you're an incompetent leader. Now, I know some of you Bluebird leaders know this, But some of you emerging leaders need to be aware of this, that oftentimes we could be promoted for doing that former technical job very well, but we lack the skill set needed to lead people. It's almost like what my mentor told me a while back when I was pursuing a leadership position. She said, Eric, what got you here won't get you there. You need a whole new skill set needed to lead people. So here's what this looks like when you have incompetent leaders in the workplace. Some of you might relate to this. For starters, they feel pressure to perform, so they start micromanaging every little thing that you do because they don't trust you. They cause confusion and chaos. Why? Because they don't know how to communicate. They can shift blame and throw you under the bus, just like my jerk of a boss did. And they can cause resentment and frustration. Why? Because they don't know how to empathize with people. Now, one of my CIO colleagues, he incorporates this 10% rule, in which he requires his team to invest 10% of their time attaining certain certifications and taking technical skills training so they can stay up to date on the latest, greatest technologies, perform at a high level, stay current in their field. Now, I think this is an important strategy, which is why we've taken it a step further. So I've worked with him and other organizations to build their leadership skills before it's necessary. So that way your emerging leaders or people who have been thrown into that leadership position unexpectedly, and you're like, how did he get there? How did she get there? Well, now they'll be equipped to perform their leadership skills at a high level. They'll be able to have the courage to have those difficult conversations, the clarity to communicate expectations, and the confidence to tell a jerk that their behavior ends here. So if you're ever interested in learning more about how you can incorporate leadership training into the day-to-day, or even as part of a succession planning strategy, let's talk afterwards. Now, this side, you ready? You might be a jerk. Yes. You're stressed. Now look, I want to be very clear on this. Stress doesn't necessarily create jerks, but it does amplify jerkish behavior. You could be carrying too much people no one sees. You can have that invisible pressure. If you're responsible for leading change without a roadmap, more work and fewer resources, that's a recipe for disaster. That's when people start micromanaging, snapping, and shutting people down. That's what I call emotional depletion in disguise. And I gotta give a shout out to Maureen here. I had a great conversation with her. She said, Eric, have you ever felt happy but not satisfied? And I said, yeah, heck yeah. Anyone here ever been happy but not satisfied? And what I realized is that that could be an example of invisible pressure, where you're stuck between doing more with less, where you're stuck between fulfillment at a job you thought you would like, but you're spending way too much time dealing with office politics and fighting fires, and you never really get to do what you intended. And that what happens? What do you deal with when it happens when you have that stress? You gotta lean in with more understanding and more empathy. You gotta give people the space to be human, not heroic. Because with more work, fewer resources, and bigger expectations, burnout, it's not just a risk anymore. It's a reality. And if we don't do anything right now to address this stress, people will continue to conflate it with jerkish behavior when it's just people trying to get their jobs done. All right, this side, you ready? You might be a jerk. Yeah. You might be a jerk. Yeah. You learned it from someone else. Heck, if you work alongside a jerk long enough, you likely become one or you burn out trying not to. If you work alongside a jerk long enough, you're likely to adopt the same habits and same characteristics, and you can unknowingly become a jerk. Now, all together, you might be a jerk. Yeah. You're afraid. That's the harsh truth. Not just afraid of failure or afraid of change or afraid of not meeting expectations, but afraid of losing credibility. So what do? We start micromanaging people. But now, we come across as bossy. Or you might be afraid of being overlooked. So what do? You start talking over people to make your voices heard. Only now you appear controlling. So even though your intent isn't to become a jerk, this fear can really bring it out of you. Now, I want to take a moment to dispel some myths that we sometimes say to ourselves and each other, which can really be holding you back from building real relationships in the workplace. And I feel compelled to share these myths with you right now because if you don't have them dialed in, it can cost you your job, your health and well-being, but most certainly business relationships. So let's talk about them right now. The first one I hear, avoiding conflict keeps me safe. Now look, unless your life is in danger, or unless there's a risk of bodily harm to you or someone else, I get it. I would agree with that approach. But what you must understand is that conflict is inevitable. It's unavoidable. And jerks, they exist at all levels. So it's only a matter of time until you work alongside, on top of, or underneath the jerk, and they can turn your whole life upside down. So wouldn't it be nice to have a set of skill sets to deal with that situation? I think so. And furthermore, as leaders, allies, advocates, it is incumbent upon us to stand up to jerks. We got to show zero tolerance for that behavior in the workplace. Matter of fact, I was talking to someone just the other day at one of our networking events. She was telling me about a time where back in the day, she was a middle manager, and the CTO of the company walked up to her and her team and threatened to fire them, saying, all right, someone's going to get fired for making this mistake. Don't you know that middle manager bravely walked back into the CTO's office and said, if you're going to fire someone, fire me because that's my team. Now, that is an example of someone who's standing up to a jerk. Now, thankfully, no one got fired. But that's an example of when we should be shielding our team from those bullies and jerks in the workplace. The next thing I hear is, if I speak up, I'll be labeled difficult. Now, I hear this a lot from business professionals who feel pressure to prove something. But check this out. Your silence only protects jerks, not your reputation. I had a good news story to share with you. Just the first day I arrived here, someone was telling me how she finally stood up to a jerk in the workplace in a private, respectful setting. She said it completely changed their workplace dynamics for the better. And she was afraid of being criticized or ridiculed or punished. But she got respected. And if you do it in the right way, so will you. The next thing is, I'm the only one dealing with this. And I hear this a lot. Don't jerks make you have a tendency to get inside your head and make you feel like you're the problem? Like you're the only one dealing with it? Right? But see, every time I deliver this talk, someone says, you know what, I thought I was the only one. You're not the only one. Jerks are everywhere, and I'm here to help. How about this? Setting boundaries means I'm selfish or unprofessional. Now, I hear this a lot from people who think that setting boundaries makes them feel difficult or uncooperative. But setting healthy boundaries not only protects your energy, but your professionalism too. As a matter of fact, one of my coaching clients, she was on the fence about setting these boundaries because she didn't want to let her team down. She was curious about how they were going to respond. But once we worked together to develop those boundaries, she was pleasantly shocked at how supportive they were of her. And it inspired them to set boundaries too. So don't be afraid to set those boundaries. The last thing is, jerks are just bad people. There's no fixing them. I fundamentally believe that there's good in the worst and there's bad in the best of us. And jerks, they're not bad to their core. They just need to develop some social skills. The kind of social skills we're going to learn about today. There's two types of jerks. There are jerks who are unaware that they're jerks, meaning no one's bothered to tell them. Then there are jerks who are aware, but they just don't care because they feel like leading through fear and intimidation is the most effective way to get anything done. And regardless of whether or not they're aware or unaware, it still presents a wonderful coaching, training, and mentoring opportunity to get them to become a model of good behavior. So let's talk if you're interested in learning more about how you can do that. Now, I remember the first time I ran into a jerk. Not the worst jerk, the first jerk. And this person had no clue they were acting like a jerk. Has anyone here ever had to confront a jerk and they didn't know they were the jerk? How awkward was that? Well, I remember my situation just like it was yesterday. Because I was sitting in my all-white Pontiac Grand Am. Yeah, don't hate a Pontiac Grand Am. And I was staring at myself in the rearview mirror. So let me tell y'all about a time where I became the jerk. You see, when I graduated from college, I was brimming with confidence. You couldn't tell me nothing. Because not only did I graduate with honors from a very good school, Connecticut College, by the way, right? I also got the very first job that I applied to, so I was brimming with confidence. I was on top of the world. You couldn't tell me nothing. And when I got on that job for the very first time, I was assigned a mentor. An easy question, what's a mentor designed to do? Teach you, show you, grow you, right? I didn't see it that way. No, seriously, Robin, I saw it as my mentor trying to tell me how to do my job. I mean, she would say things like this. No, Eric, don't do it like this, do it like that. You get a better result. No, don't do it this way, do it the other way. This is what your boss really needs you to do. No, not like this, do it like that. This is how you're supposed to service your clients. So I kind of got fed up with her one day and I said, who do you think you are talking to me like this? I mean, don't you know I graduated with honors from a very good school? Connecticut College, by the way. I'm sorry, but if I was successful there, I can be successful here. So thanks, but no thanks. How do you think my mentor responded to me then? She probably gave me the finger, too. But it didn't stop there. Not only was I rude to my mentor, I was rude to Charlie. And Charlie, man, Charlie was the most senior member on the team. And rumor had it was that Charlie was going to be retiring in the near future. But see, Charlie was known for having the warmest smile, the kind of smile that lights up the room. And I remember the first time Charlie introduced himself to me, he said, "Hi, Eric. My name's Charlie. Pleasure to meet you. Welcome on board. I'm here to help." And as I shook Charlie's hand, I responded, I said, "Hi, Charlie. My name's Eric. I guess I was hired to replace you, huh?" I'm even more embarrassed to say it now. Man, look at this reaction. Man. But not only was I rude to Charlie, I was rude to my other coworkers too. What do you think happened sooner or later? That was immediate, right? Cold winter morning, my boss, he summoned me to his office. He said, "Eric, I just walked by your desk and you got a stack of paperwork almost as tall as you. Why aren't you getting help from your mentor?" I mean, poor Charlie has a smile since the day you arrived. What's going on, man? We didn't hire you for this. And if you can't turn things around now, I'm gonna have to let you go. That's the ball game. I was devastated. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I went from being on top of the world to having a crash landing in record form. And I was about to leave his office to make a beeline to the bathroom, most likely to go and cry. He stopped me and he said, "But wait, I want you to attend an emotional intelligence course." And I'm thinking, emotional intelligence? Wait a second. Wait, first, he threatens to fire me. And now he's trying to tell me that I have dumb emotions? So in order to develop smarter emotions, I need to take some emotional intelligence course? And he proceeded to explain, he said, "Eric, I see how you act in the workplace. I see how defensive you can get when people ask you questions about your work. I see how argumentative you can be when things don't go your way. And I see how much you shut down when faced with a challenging situation. This emotional intelligence course can really help you out." But Bluebirds, make no mistake about it, he wasn't suggesting, he wasn't recommending I attend this course. I was voluntold. My job depended on it. But you know something? It's one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I became amazed with just how I was acting in the workplace. I mean, how rude I was to my mentor and Charlie, who were just looking out for me. And how short and condescending I was to my clients who were just looking for some answers. And that's where I found myself, sitting in my all-white Pontiac Grand Am, staring at myself in the rearview mirror saying, "I'm a jerk." Now look, truth be told, in this room alone, I said something a lot harsher than the word jerk, but you get what I'm saying though, right? And once I realized I was acting like a jerk, I realized all the mistakes I was making. For starters, I was wasting time. I was wasting precious time going tit for tat with other people because I had to be right. I was wasting time avoiding going to my mentor, Charlie, because I was too proud to let them know that I needed their help for something. And if you're like me, it's not just frustrating, it's expensive. Because you're spending at least 3 hours per week dealing with that kind of nonsense instead of getting any real work done. And the work that you are getting done, you're not just putting out fires. You're losing morale, momentum, and mental bandwidth. No wonder why so many people are so stressed out, because they appear like a jerk due to wasting all that time. The second mistake I made is that I was disengaged. Now look, I don't think I was a quiet quitter like I was in my first jerk story. But I think looking back at it, I was misunderstood. And quite frankly, I didn't make any attempts to be understood. But I realized that I was the only young, black, Generation X/millennial employee, fresh out of college, Connecticut College, by the way, with fresh ideas, different perspectives, different ways of doing things. And my inability to communicate those foundational differences is what helped me become a jerk, on top of being disengaged. And you know something? Robin said it yesterday. Employee disengagement is at an all-time high. What did you say, 2 out of 3? 2 out of 3 people are disengaged. 2 out of 3. But this translates well over $8.8 trillion in lost productivity. So here's what we should be asking ourselves. Am I disengaged? Has my team checked out? If so, what are you doing to bring them back in? Mistake number 3, I was a poor team player. While my mentor and Charlie and others were trying to help me, support me, collaborate with me, I saw it as an opportunity to compete against them. Why? Because I had to be first, better, faster, more efficient, more effective. My ego became my amigo. And I realized that being a jerk doesn't get you what you want, not at all. It gets you excluded. And that's what happened to me. Now, this took me on an evolution from being an expert jerk who turned jerk expert, which now gives me the unique ability to not only help people work with jerks, but manage conflict and build real relationships. So how can you all build strong relationships, work with jerks, and still soar? I want to introduce you to the art of recognition. Recognition is one of the 5-star traits that I have outlined in my book, How to Work with Jerks. It's the ability to understand what you're feeling and thinking, what's causing you to feel, think, and act a certain way. And once you have this level of emotional self-awareness dialed in, it helps you see yourself more clearly, so that way you can make sounder, more strategic decisions and initiate change. Think of recognition as the ability to keep your head on a swivel or to do a pulse check so you can understand what's going on beneath the surface. Now, people who practice the art of recognition have the incredible ability to manage up. This not only builds strategic, collaborative workplace relationships, but it keeps a jerk off your back. So how can you practice recognition? The first thing is ask for informal feedback. Now, I think it was yesterday, Rob, I got to pick on you again. You mentioned this yesterday about providing feedback. The chart shows most people want feedback, what? Multiple times throughout the week and throughout the months, right? Some people, they just wait to the yearly review. Asking for informal feedback helps your team feel open, honest, and vulnerable. I had a great conversation with someone yesterday, and she was telling me about a time where back in the day, she was trying to tell her boss about something that was upsetting her in the workplace. Some decision that was made, it was a policy decision, affected her and other people. And all her boss did, dismiss what she said, undermine what she was feeling, and really deny all the things that she said. And he missed out on a golden opportunity, just put his leadership hat down for a moment to just be a human. And he didn't. How do you think she responded? She left. Because she wasn't feeling seen, heard, or valued. And this is exactly how you can be perceived as a jerk, because it shows that you're not interested, you're not curious, and you have it's a my way or highway approach. And not only are you being perceived as a jerk, you're committing a costly mistake, because now it costs nearly twice as much to replace employees that leave your organization. So you need to be mindful of that. The next thing, one of my favorites, think regularly, write in a journal. Now, I love to journal. I've been journaling for years. I do it at least twice a day. In the beginning of the day, where I plan my day, and at the end of the day, where I reflect on how my day went. And this gives me a level of introspection to improve on the days ahead. But if journaling ain't your jam, it's all good. But here's what I recommend instead. Carve out 20 minutes in the morning. You can do the same thing. Reflect on your day. What do you have planned? What kind of conflict situations are arising? What do you need to be prepared for? And at the end of the day, reflect on how your day went. Did it go as expected? What went well? What didn't? And now you can improve on the days ahead. I've heard some folks, they've taken personality tests. This is another thing I recommend. How many of y'all have taken personality tests? Everyone in this room, what's your favorite one? Shout them out. DISC? Oh, that's a great one. What else? Strength Finders, great one. That's a good one too. Myers-Briggs, yes. You know my favorite one? The 360-degree assessment. Because not only does it allow me to assess myself, but it allows colleagues to provide anonymous feedback to me too. So now I get the full picture. I get to assess myself and compare that to how other people assess me. The last thing you could do to practice recognition is ask the question what, not why. Very simple, not easy to do. Because oftentimes when we're stressed out, we're working with a jerk, we ask the question why? Why do I have to work alongside this jerk? Why did my boss give me negative feedback? Why can't I get the board members to buy into my way, this approach? But when we ask the question why, we're just venting. We're not actively seeking solutions to our problems. So instead of asking the question why, ask what. What can I do differently for a better outcome? What can I do differently to work alongside this jerk? What can I do differently to get the board members on our side? Because this is how you actively seek solutions to your problems. And this is what my coaching client Judith did. I was working with her for a couple of years. But last year, she was working with one jerk of a boss who constantly dismissed her, took credit for her work, and made her feel invisible. Despite her strong results and initiative, she could not get her boss to respect her. And like some of us would ask, she asked the question, why? Why is my boss treating me like this? Why doesn't he treat me with the dignity and respect that I deserve? Until we started working together, she started asking the question, what instead? Which changed everything. She asked questions like this: what do I need to do to feel more respected in the workplace? What do I need to do? What kind of leadership style do I want to embody in this kind of organization? That what changed everything. Because she realized that she wasn't just dealing with a conflict situation. It was a real culture problem. And the problem just wasn't with her boss. It was with the system that rewarded silencing instead of supporting. And she realized that she no longer wanted to shrink herself just to fit in. Instead, she decided to create an exit strategy that honored her worth. But here's what I like the most about what she did. She didn't just jump ship abruptly. She left with intention. And I'm proud to say now, not only is she working as a senior leader in an HR company, now she's got a job that respects her voice, pays her more, and lets her lead with impact. You see, she didn't just escape a jerk. She soared above a system that empowered one. And she didn't do it by asking the question why. She did it by asking what. Maureen, I got to give you another shout out because you told me about that leveling up versus leveling out conference you attended, and you were like, I had this question, like, what do I need to do to get to the next level? And those are the kind of questions that we need to be asking ourselves to really get to that level. What, not why. The next thing we can do is empathy. And I think a lot of us are familiar with empathy. We've empathized with people, with each other throughout this whole conference. We've empathized with our peers and colleagues. We've probably taken empathy training. I'm sure a lot of you know empathy is the ability to seek and reflect on the thoughts and opinions of other people. But here's the thing about empathy. It's hard. Why do you think empathy is so hard? Yes, it's emotionally draining. It requires you to be vulnerable. Yes, very true. Pride, very good. Have you ever had to empathize with a jerk? With someone you just can't stand? Someone who has a different personality than you do, a different value system than you do. You have to empathize with those people too. And when you don't empathize with them, and you don't even make an attempt to empathize with them, you leave an employee in isolation and a human on an island. So here's what you can do to build more empathy. First, create a safe environment. Like I mentioned before, employees appreciate an environment which they feel open, honest, and vulnerable. People need to feel safe enough to ask questions, share their concerns and their ideas without feeling ridiculed, criticized, or fear of being judged. The next thing is empower people. Don't micromanage. Don't be like my jerk of a boss who was standing above me telling me what information to leave in and what information to leave out of my report. You gotta be able to trust that your team could be just as effective as you can in their own way. Latitude is gratitude. So back up, give them the space they need so they can make it happen. And finally, listen, understand, and validate the needs of others. This is short for love, L-U-V. It's important to love your team, love your stakeholders. You gotta be able to listen to their needs, understand their concerns, and validate their ideas. It's not just important to do this with your team, although it's incredibly effective, but it's extremely effective when you're working with different stakeholders. I've heard so many different conflict situations during this time here with business stakeholders, the CFO, all marketing, all types of people. We gotta be able to love them too. This is exactly what Michael Loggins did. He was the VP of IT at SMC, which is a global manufacturing company. And I worked with him and his senior leadership team for a period of time to help them build those empathetic strategies and intentional connections. And now they're being seen as a partner with the business, something that they long strived for but couldn't achieve until after we worked together. Intentional connections and empathy. All right, the last strategy I want to share with you is called the AAA method. This stands for Assess, Analyze, Act. And this is also outlined in my book, How to Work with Jerks. Now, Assess, Analyze, Act, this helps you diffuse tense situations, mitigate conflict, and avoid those knee-jerk reactions that we sometimes get when our emotions get the best of us, when we rely on our own habitual way to manage conflict, which, if you're like me, you can really put your foot in your mouth sometimes. Here's how it works. The first step is to assess the situation. Oftentimes when we're stressed out, we're working with jerks, our body tells us this. Our heart could beat fast, our palms could get sweaty, we can furrow our eyebrow, clench our jaw. Anyone here have any body triggers? Yeah, what do you have? Oh, yeah, the tension in your chest, it feels tight, right? Yeah. Anybody else? Sweaty palms, yes, yes. Sometimes I get a vein in the middle of my forehead. Yeah. Clenched jaw, yeah, that's why I wear a mouth guard now. Because I broke all my enamel from clenching my jaw, all right? Now, once you're able to assess what your body's telling you, now you can analyze why. Why is my body telling me this? It could be you're stuck in traffic. By the time you get to work, you're inundated with meetings and phone calls. Or maybe you're just sick and tired of working alongside this jerk that's gaslighting you, really pushing your buttons, and making you do something that you might regret. And then once you analyze, then you can act, which really means take a step back so you can take a more measured approach and respond thoughtfully. Let's be real here, y'all. How many of y'all have ever just skipped steps 1 and 2 and gone right to step 3 and acted? Might have made a bad situation worse, right? Well, see, this 3-step process puts the guardrails up and keeps you from making that bad situation worse. Now, look, this is nothing new. Matter of fact, Starbucks has something similar. They call it the latte method. And they use that to diffuse tense situations with irate customers. So it's pumpkin spice season now. So if you're ever enjoying a pumpkin spice latte at Starbucks and you observe a conflict situation, notice how they practice the latte method. The whole point of this process is to delay that response. This puts the guardrails up, all right? And it's just a quick, easy 3-step process. Now, it's easy to me because I've been practicing it, but it can be hard for many people. Because this 3-step process is a powerful tool. It takes things that are messy and complicated, and it gives you a clear, intentional way to respond. But for some of us in this room, it could be challenging, especially many of us who tend to avoid conflict. Because it requires you to lean in when pieces of you want to shut down, disengage, or fire off. But I know exactly what it means to step outside of my comfort zone. And I mean way outside of my comfort zone. So let me just tell you a quick story about what it taught me about how to work with jerks and build relationships. Now, many moons ago, I studied abroad to Costa Rica. Anyone here ever been to Costa Rica? Oh man, it's a beautiful country. And I was so excited to do that. And I couldn't wait. But once my host family picked me up from the airport to take me back to their house, reality set in. Fears and doubts, they crept up my shoulder and into my mind. I mean, I could remember sitting in that back seat, palms sweaty, knees shaking, heart racing 100 miles an hour. I couldn't even breathe, I was so nervous. Because I realized something at that moment. I realized that I committed to something that I wasn't fully prepared for, and there was no turning back. I couldn't speak Spanish. Not one word. Oh, that's a lie. I knew how to say, what's that? Yeah. I knew how to say, hola, ¿cómo está? Which means, hello, how are you? But I already said that when I met them at the airport. So I was out of words to say. And needless to say, that ride home was filled with an awkward silence. You know that awkward silence you experience when you're in an elevator with someone you don't know? Come on, I know some of you did this, during our time together. You try to avoid eye contact and you just can't wait for those doors to open. That's how I felt. But except this was 100 times worse because it took nearly 30 minutes to get back to the house. And I couldn't wait for that day to end. But regardless how I was feeling at that moment, I felt more optimistic about the next day because that was the day I was going to report to school for the very first time. So I said, hey, I'm going to learn enough Spanish to speak to my host family and everybody else. It's a bit ambitious, but that was all I had to rely on. And when that next day approached, I confidently walked out the house. And my host mother, she looked at me with the warmest smile. She said, adios, que le vaya bien, Dios la acompaña. I didn't know she was wishing me well on my journey to school and for God to be with me. I just said, adios, and I began walking to school. And as I'm walking to school, the inevitable happens. What do you think that was? I got lost. Anyone here ever been lost in a foreign country? Oh my gosh. I didn't just panic, I freaked out. I frantically walked up and down the street. I couldn't read any of the names of the streets. I couldn't read any of the names of the street signs. And the more I walked, the more lost I felt. And what should have been my first instinct was my last thought, which was, I wish it was that, but it was stop and ask for help, Mike. Stop and ask for help. I wish I knew how to get back to my house. You know what I mean? So check this out. I stopped walking, and I looked to my right, and I saw this guard. He was standing outside this bank, but he was holding this big shotgun in his hands. Of all people, this is the person that's to my right. And I remembered I approached him, and I was scared, not just because I couldn't speak Spanish, but because he was holding this big shotgun in his hands. But I had no choice. So I remember as I was sweating profusely, I approached him and I said, yo no soy, ¿dónde está? That was the most amount of words in Spanish I ever spoke in my life. Even more than hola, ¿cómo está? But I didn't make any sense. And the guard, he looked at me as if I was crazy. Then he clutched his weapon even tighter. I was scared there, y'all. At that moment, I said, I might as well just live here. It's easier. But I knew my parents weren't going to have that. So I figured I had to do something until I remembered something. 2 words that I learned on a plane ride to Costa Rica. You know what those 2 words were? Oh, I wish. Or close. Ayúdame, which means help me. And then I remembered I had the address in my bag the whole time. So then I regrouped, a little bit more confidence, and I approached him again. I said, ayúdame, ayúdame, and pointed to the address, hoping he'd understand that I was lost. The guard wasn't having it. He snatched the paper from my hand. He looked at the piece of paper. Then he looked down at me. He looked at the piece of paper again. Then he looked down at me. He looked at the piece of paper. Then he looked down at me again. And this time he said, Gringo! It's 2 blocks up to your right. You can't miss it. Right? What? He could speak English the whole time? All that time I wasted. All that anxiety. All that hesitation. It had nothing to do with the guard being unapproachable. It was how I perceived it and how I responded. Isn't that what happens in the workplace? When we encounter people who appear to be intimidating, frustrating, unapproachable, or even like a jerk? When in actuality, you have no idea who they are. But when we assess what might be going on inside you, analyze what might be driving their behavior, and act with intention, you can open doors you never knew existed. So I challenge you with this. The next time you encounter someone who appears to be intimidating, frustrating, unapproachable, or even like a jerk, I challenge you to pause, breathe, and act with intention. Because you can't control everyone's personality, but you can control how you recognize, connect, and respond to difficult behaviors. And that's how you transform workplace conflict, one interaction at a time. Now, I have 2 minutes here? Yeah? Okay. I want to see if anyone has any questions for anything I just shared. About the stories, about working with jerks. Any questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Adrienne, and I work with Proto Technology. Marissa's my amazing boss, if y'all know her. Well, I'm a Gen Z, and I was really shocked by what you said, because I don't want to toot any horns, but I have a lot of Gen Z friends, right? Birds of a feather, and I would say that our communication skills are pretty spot on. Your comment on the Gen Z stare is very interesting. I think people in my generation are just kind of over it. So it's just staring off, really, are you talking to me like this right now? So I don't know, I would love to hear your perspective on interactions with people Gen Z or maybe even Gen Alpha, and how maybe I can take notes from your experience and turn them into, I don't know, a better version of myself, so I can better work with people of other generations.
Absolutely, absolutely. Honestly, sometimes I think we overcomplicate things when we talk about, all right, well, this is a Generation Z person, this is a millennial, this is how we have to treat with them. But at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is empathy and having a conversation and really getting to know what it is that you're dealing with. One of the things I recommend, all right, I talk about having one-on-ones, and sometimes we use it as an opportunity to ask for status updates. But when we use that as an opportunity to really connect with other people and understand what's driving their behavior, what their ambitions are, and how you can support them, that's when you see that person as an individual. That's when you can better support them. And that's how you build real relationships. So at the highest level, yeah, are there different generations in the workplace? Should we acknowledge that? Yes. But at the end of the day, it doesn't replace having a real conversation. And that's what we need to do. And I'm sure there's many other things that we could do depending on the situation, but at the end of the day, we got to invest in those conversations. Now, I think my time might be a little bit low, so here's what I want you to do, all right? I'm only gonna take 2 more minutes of your time here, okay? And this is not something that you have to answer right now, but I want you to really think about this when you're on your way home. Think about what's one behavior you'll start or stop this week to work with jerks. I want you to challenge yourself with that. And the last thing I want to do is I want to share with you one last story. This is my daughter, Sophia. And this picture was taken maybe about 4 years ago, something like that. And now she's 9, she's going on 10-teen. And when she was born, we were like this. And now she's getting older, we're kind of like this, right? But I love her to death. And she has ADHD, okay? And each day she wakes up to a battle most people never see. She's smart, she's talented, she's incredibly creative. Her kindness will light up this room. But when it's time for school, that's when the storm hits. That's when you can catch her at the dinner table or in her room with tears running down her cheeks because, she tries hard to focus. She tries to do a good job, but sometimes it says no matter how hard she tries, it's as if she can't keep up. She needs to try harder, the teacher once told me. She's got the worst ADHD I've ever seen in my life, her principal once told me to. Those words, they don't help. They don't see her. They don't see her grit. They reduce her to a diagnosis. And I've tried tutoring and therapy and routines. And what pains me the most is not just watching her suffer sometimes, it's watching a system dismiss her. The unanswered emails, the unspoken judgment, the downplaying her needs. You see, she is just no different than anybody else. And one of the things that I love about her is her resilience. Just like many of us, this isn't a story about ADHD. It's about a story of resilience. It's about fighting those unspoken battles, those invisible battles. It's a story about being overlooked and underestimated and still showing up. And I know many of you in this room know exactly what I mean. You've had your ideas dismissed in meetings. You've been told to smile more, shrink less, try harder. You've worked with jerks in heels and business suits in those corner offices from people who are telling you, who are trying to diminish your brilliance to preserve their power. And just like Sophia, you keep showing up. That's your power. So I leave you with this. Stop proving and start owning your power. Don't let jerks determine your altitude. You aren't too much. You are enough, and you're not alone. And one thing I learned from Sophia is that courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's just refusing to quit. And if she can rise in a world not built for how she thinks, so can you. So keep soaring for yourself, for Sophia, and for every woman still finding her wings. Thank you.
Everyone, give a warm round of applause
Thank you very much.
for Eric, man.
Thank you.
That was awesome, bro.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.